Traditionally, being literate has meant that a person has the ability to read and write written information. However, the meaning of literacy has recently been evolving and changing. Now, many people consider it to be a means to communicate through any form, such as reading and writing, speaking, using sign language, graffiti, reading body language, and many more. Latif argues that literacy is not the text, but the ability to be able to interact in any social interaction, and is therefore not limited to any one form. It may take any form in order for a person to interact with any given situation. The social interaction at the local football match therefore falls under the broad umbrella that is modern-day literacy. Many might not have considered it to be so, but it is a way for two friends to communicate meaning back and forth in ways that may not occur in any other place. The football argument is an example of what is called place-based literacy. The two friends use literacy in ways that would otherwise not occur when watching a match of football, particularly at this match, as one of the men refers to the magazine and scoreboard that are specific to the match. Many of the terms used in their conversation would likely be specific to the sport, or not specific to the sport, but used in a way that is in this situation. One of the men could have said, "He was so high," which could otherwise mean that the person is using drugs, but when used specifically at this place, it would most likely mean that a tackle was done illegally. Cormack, Green and Reed explain that a text is very often influenced by context and place, such as being at the game of football. They argue that a child's experiences in place-based literacy can affect their use of literacy for years to come in the future. A child can learn a lot from their experiences in a place, in particular when it comes to literacy. A teacher could use places in their pedagogy in order to teach many parts of the literacy. For instance, this experience at the football could be used in the teaching of debating how words can have different meanings in different contexts. It could be used in other examples of place-based literacy as well. Pascoe, Wheatley and Oliver discuss that a sense of place is often used as inspiration in a person's literacy. For much of the class that enjoy football, this context can act as motivation and inspiration in their own literacy practices. This theory can also be used with other scenarios and places that students have interest in. To use this, it's important for a teacher to know their students and what their interests are. Luke and Freebody created the 4-resource model, which describes the 4 ways and levels in which a person can interact with the text. The first and most simple way to interact with the text is simply by understanding it. The second role is to take meaning from a text by using the other parts of your life to understand it on a deeper level. The third role is to actually use literacy in your everyday life to your advantage. This can be a conversation, reading, filling out paperwork, or using literacy in any other way that you can think of. The last role is being critical with literacy. Luke and Freebody describe this as the most complex role. If a person can be critical of literacy and use literacy to be critical, they are considered to be more literate in a given area than people in any of the other 3 roles described. This is how the 2 men in the football scenario use literacy. To some, the conversation that the 2 men were having would not be seen as very intellectual. However, they were using literacy to be critical on the interaction that occurred on the field, which we now know can be considered one form of literacy. One of the men even uses a magazine and the scoreboard to back up his argument as to whether the umpire may or may not have made the correct decision. The fact that they are using critical literacy means they would be considered text analyzers to Luke and Freebody. This means that they're using literacy critically, which is thought of as the highest form of literacy and the most complex way of using it. This shows that complex literacy can be found, used and taught in a range of social interactions, not just in the classroom. Pedagogically, this can be used in any class. Complex and critical forms of literacy can be used anywhere. It can not only be used to teach literacy during other classes, but it can be used to teach it in new ways that the students find more interesting. Literacy does not have to be confined to a classroom, particularly an English classroom. Again, it is of great importance that all teachers invest time into getting to know their students. If a teacher does not know their students, it's difficult to know their interests and therefore difficult to use and teach critical literacy by teaching to the students' interests. It is highly ill-advised that a teacher makes assumptions about students, such as that all the boys will enjoy an example about football or that girls will like dolls. Comer believes that teachers and anyone else who has a say on what children learn need to be more critical of the literacy that they teach and how they teach it. She argues that we need to move away from solely teaching the traditional forms of literacy, such as books and newspapers, that Heath discussed in 1983. Too often, teachers are teaching forms of literacy that will not benefit all the students in the future. The curriculum often teaches parts of literacy that are considered academic, rather than those that will help the general population live their adult lives. In many schools, there's an emphasis on things such as essays, which will help those that go on to study at university, but will only be wasted time for those students who decide on any other career path at all. The conclusion that can be drawn from Comer is that teachers not only need to teach critical literacy, but need to use it themselves in order to be critical about the content that they teach. In summary, a teacher should understand that any social interaction uses some form of literacy, and some resources should be looked into with more depth in order to truly understand their complexities. Many resources can be used to teach literacy, and it can be taught not only through English lessons, but to be taught in all subjects. Place can have a significant impact on students' learning of literacy, and therefore the future use of it. So teachers should use this to their own advantage in their pedagogical approach. Teachers need to be critical of the literacy that they teach and their approach to teaching it. Thank you.